Minecraft animations, the foundation of my channel. It's been over 2 years since my last animation, until just recently I uploaded the latest episode of the Daithi De Nogla animated series. By comparing the old animations to the new one, you can tell that much more work went into this one. I actually didn't record all the work I did, so my best estimate for how long this animation took would be around 40 hours. This includes making the audio, textures, scenery, animation, and lighting, and I'm going to talk about all of that in this video. The way I make audio for Nogla's animations is different from what most animators do. While most animators rip the audio directly from the video, mine is spliced and rearranged to tell a different story.
My god, I have no idea where I am!
Much safer in here.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna need flashback.
Oh, my dentist appointment was 10 minutes ago.
This is how I do all of my Nogla animations. When you take out the context of the original video, you can make up something completely different with the audio that you have. A good example of this is my second Nogla animation. The story is about Nogla and Terrorizer getting stranded on a deserted island, but in the original video, it was actually a challenge where they traveled thousands of blocks from home and tried to make their way back. These are two very different stories, but the audio is still the same. I just rearranged the audio of the original and made an animation about them being stranded to tell a different story that would be more entertaining in an animated form. This method of making audio gives you a lot of creative freedom, and I definitely recommend it to anyone doing these kinds of animations. For those of you who have seen my old videos, you've definitely noticed a change in my style. What influenced this was a push to do better, to make something move with more than just 2 keyframes. I wanted it to look good. Now, I'm a big fan of the Minecraft style and feel, and although there are plenty of well-made Minecraft animations out there, they lose the Minecraft feel through being less blocky, having face rigs, or just overall being something that isn't really Minecraft. However, Mojang's animations give off that Minecraft feel. I wanted to achieve that feel, and I did so by not bending the limbs and by using a lot of follow-through and overlapping, as well as arcs. Making the limbs not bend was very tricky, but I overcame this by having the limbs come off of the body when they needed to. It's a cartoon, they don't feel pain. In this scene, when Vanoss kicks the Enderman in the Ender Pearls, his leg has actually come completely off of his body. You can't see it from this angle, but if you look over here... Speaking of Endermen, this one was quite the task. I don't know if you guys know this, but Endermen are very long, so not bending those limbs made posing him awkward. This style of animation was pretty experimental, and I had not touched Minimator in months when making this animation, which is why I made this quick test animation before starting the actual animation, which I will show you right now.
Evan,
No, I can't. I don't have any iron.
here's your boat.
Wood is a precious resource, and you make a boat.
You've probably noticed I actually used those same animations in the actual animation. That's what I like to call reduce, reuse, recycle, baby. Another big change in this animation was the faces. In the old animations, their faces never changed or moved when talking. It kind of took the life away from them and made the animations seem very lackluster, so this time I did change the faces. The way this was done changed depending on the character. Nogla had 2 instances of a player head pinned to his normal head, with one being a full head with different mouth textures and the second being only his eyes. The way the mouths and eyes changed was through simple texture changes. I then used the original head underneath for moving the actual head itself. The key to this rig is to keep the keyframes of each piece completely separate from each other. Having all of them be in the same head would have meant much more textures, and it would have been difficult to move the head while also changing the textures at the same time, since they would be sharing keyframes. Marcel's rig was different since his skin didn't have a mouth, but he still had an eye layer so he can move his eyes. Vanoss's rig was very different since he didn't have a mouth, but he did have a beak. Because of this, I textured a villager's nose to be the top half of his beak and had the beak already on his face be the lower half. I would then open and close the beak when Vanoss was talking. Although there are rigs available for Minimator that have more flexibility than texture changes, I actually went with this method for 2 reasons. 1, it's much easier to change textures rather than animate an actual face. 2, this method of face animation is much more Minecrafty. I already said before that using face rigs takes away from the Minecraft feel, even though there are some really good animations that use these kinds of faces, and then there are those that aren't. I always felt that the most Minecrafty feel for face animations were the face animations in Minecraft story mode. But I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks that those characters are a little bit ugly. To avoid those uncanny faces, I had to keep everything within the head of the player. Yes, it's difficult when you only have an 8x8 area to make faces, but it can be done, especially if their mouth takes up over half of it. Even though Terrorizer's mouth is really small, I still made it move when he talked. It's very subtle and barely noticeable, but animating this way kept the Minecraft feel intact. There was a lot of lighting to be done in this animation, especially since they're in a cave where there is no sun to light everything up. The scene was mainly lit up using lava, glow lichen, and torches. The miner hats on each of the characters' heads were added so that way each character was always lit up, even in dark areas. The beam of light coming out of the hats was actually the glow of a cone attached to their heads, but since this was an object and technically not light, it would pierce through other objects, which is why I had to disable them in certain scenes. Now would be a good time to talk a little bit about Minimator's glitchy rendering system. For some reason, when two beams intersected with each other, the intersected area would be negated, leaving no light, but it was only visible from the inside of the beams, so it was fine as long as the camera stayed outside of the beams. I think every Minimator animator is pretty aware of these alpha issues, and if I sat here complaining about them, I'd be preaching to the choir, so we'll just leave it at that. Although Mojang's animation style was a big inspiration I took into this project, there is a lot of scenes where I took inspiration from something else. Since there are no penguins in Minecraft, I obviously had to make one, and I did so by building a statue of a penguin in a single player world, importing the different pieces as schematics, and shrinking them down to be penguin sized. This penguin that I built is actually based on the penguins in the Twilight Forest. I'm sure you guys noticed that Schmeg and his Schmeg followers were in the cult scene. The followers were actually a semi-inverted version of Schmeg's skin. Oh, wait, let me double check and make sure his name is Schmeg. Okay, yeah, his name is Schmeg. This next one is a bit weird, but this Enderman fight sequence was actually inspired by the fight under the bridge in Emperor's New Groove. I also did this. And finally, the one you all noticed was the ending sequence, which was inspired by the crate scene in Madagascar. So there you have it. I spent over 40 hours on this project, taking inspiration from many sources and putting a lot of time and effort into this project. Any mistakes I made were quickly stomped, and I didn't leave any wiggle room for any other mistakes. That's where time and dedication get you. Absolute perfection. Zero flaws. Totally spotless. Okay, fine. A number of you have noticed that at the end when Terrorizer says,
My God, I have no idea where I am!
that is actually Marcel talking, not Terrorizer. I'm going to be completely honest. This was not intentional whatsoever. I 100% thought this was Terrorizer talking. I have heard this clip at least 50 times, and not once did I think it was really Marcel talking. I'm honestly baffled. I've watched their videos for years, and I never thought I'd mess up their voices, but I did, and now that mistake has been immortalized in this animation, which is now on the internet. Forever. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry I still haven't made the new speed laps yet. I didn't have time to work on it since this project came along, but I promise I haven't dropped it, and it will come out. At some point. See you next time.